Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Bill L.
Hello, my name's Bill LaVALLEE and I'm an alcoholic. I have to sit down because I have $200,000 legs I'm walking on now. They had to rebuild them. I fell a lot while I was drinking and things like that. I want to thank the secretary for asking me to be here. My heart is pounding. I will also tell you that there will be no continuity to what I say tonight. No, I'm serious. I'm 73 years old, and when a thought comes, I just have to grab it. And so, you know, whatever comes out, comes out. I'm 73, as I told you. I'm 35 years, 1 week, 2 days sober. And the one thing I can tell you for sure about being sober 35 years is eventually you walk around with all your keys on a string, because it's the only way you can remember where you live, how to get your mail. It's not so much now that you lose your car, it's that you can't remember where the car key is. So you have to wear it. I'm gonna put on my glasses so I can see you. I brought my big book. Not that I'm a big book thumper. I'm not a big book thumper. But I wanted to show you my big book so you know that I used it. This is chapter 5. And if you're smart, you'll get yourself a book study, and you'll go there with an outliner and a pencil, and you'll have things like this later. I have notes in the book where people said things to me that helped save my ass. What was I gonna say next? Oh, I'm not an addict. I know some of you are addicts. I hear you say I'm an alcoholic addict, but I'm not an addict. You did very hard drugs. I only shot speed for 3.5 years. And I only did a few pills. Stelazine, Thorazine, Elavil, Mellaril, Librium, Valium, anything that ended in zine, or all, or ud. I smoked grass for maybe 30 years, so I know it's not habit forming. It was just something I liked. And I have an eating disorder also, and my top weight in sobriety is 285. My bottom weight in sobriety is 125. My goal weight is 110. It doesn't seem unreasonable to me, but it may be unreasonable to you. Alcoholism runs in my family. Some of you know my son Chuck. He's 47 and he has 31 years sober. My daughter is 48. She has 15 years sober. She would have more years, but she did go out and experiment a little bit. I have 2 grandchildren who are warming up in the wings. Please save them a seat. My granddaughter Cassidy is 13, and she's going into high school, and she's absolutely one of the most gorgeous African-American women I've ever seen in my life. She's just fabulous, but she's gonna be here. And when she was in preschool, the teacher asked me one day, she said, "Excuse me, Mr. LaVALLEE, is someone in your family in one of those 12-step programs?" And I said, "Yeah, why do you ask?" And she said, "Well, whenever the kids are singing happy birthday, so," and my son Chuck's son is 4, Dashiell. I love the name Dashiell. They named him after Dashiell Hammett because of my own, shall we say, shady political background. I have a dossier this thick in the FBI. I was on Nixon's enemies list, which I think is fantastic. Not many of us can say that. But anyway, I was on Nixon's enemies list. I was honored by Reagan, and I was arrested in the White House with Betty Grable for smoking grass. Well, we were there doing Guys and Dolls, and we went into a closet to smoke some grass, and we didn't know that the smell was going to sneak out under the door, you know? So this FBI guy arrested us, and I mean, I'm standing in the White House, and I'm saying, I'm handcuffed to Betty Grable, for God's sake. And she said, don't worry, honey, we'll get out of it. And we did. But anyway, I mean, when you get arrested, you may as well get arrested with Betty Grable. For you kids, look her up. She was one of the top sex symbols of World War II, which gives you a clue. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about alcoholism. And about Dashiell. Dashiell is learning to lie. He's 4. The other day he was at my house, and he had something clasped in his hand, and he dropped it, and he quickly picked it up. And Chuck says, what's that, Dashiell? And Dashiell said, nothing. And he said, what is it, Dashiell? He said, my Lego piece. He said, your Lego piece, did you get that from school? No, I did not get it from school. Chuck said, well, where'd you get it? He said, my mommy took me to the Lego store, and she bought me my Lego piece. And Chuck said, when did she do this? He said, next week. He hasn't got it down, fine, but he's learning. He's learning to lie very, very well. I had a nice career. I was a star of tomorrow any number of decades. But as you notice, I'm not a household name because tomorrow never came. I drank and I used all the time. And I had a really good career. Once, just to sort of capsulize what I was like to work with, I was doing a show in New York that I'd done for about 3 years. And one night we went out for drinks, and when I woke up, I was in a bed that wasn't mine, which wasn't unusual. I mean, that wasn't unusual. And somebody else from the cast was in another bed, and I looked out the window, and I woke him up, and I said, Gary, we're not in New York. And he said, no, we're not in New York. I said, well, where are we? He said, Chicago. I said, what are we doing in Chicago? He said, we opened the show here 2 weeks ago. So I was in a blackout for 2 weeks doing this show, and I got fabulous reviews. I mean, great, great reviews. And years later in Alcoholics Anonymous, I ran into one of the critics from Chicago, and I said, you saw me in such and such a show, and you gave me fantastic reviews, and I want to thank you for that. And he said, oh, okay. And I said, but I don't remember it. I was in a blackout. And he said, that's okay. I was in a blackout too. So there goes your career, you know what I'm saying? I'm Sicilian. I know I passed for white. And my name is Guillermo Antonio Roberto Enrico de LaVALLEE. Like my granddaughter says, you pass for white, Papa. And I do. And I come from a truly Louisiana, Sicilian family. They controlled alcohol and drugs in Louisiana, which made it very difficult for an alcoholic and an addict as a child, because you had to sneak around these people to get your stuff. And I left Louisiana at a very early age and I was brought out to Hollywood, and then I went to New York, and I worked for a lot in New York, and I really got to be a mess. There was a time where my ex-wife, Donna, whose first name was Poor, like in Poor Donna, everybody I've ever been involved with has had the same first name, Poor Donna, Poor Althea, Poor Joel, Poor everything, because they were, attached to me. And at one time I was so strung out that my wife used to put, by the way, she was a Playboy bunny. My kid's mother was a Playboy bunny. Very gorgeous lady. I was hot myself, actually, but I was. I mean, some people remember. And anyway, she would put this thing on my body, and it would say, my name is Bill LaVALLEE. I live at 235 East 67th Street. My number is blah, blah, blah. I mean, what a stupid woman. you know, I mean, wouldn't you have just let me go out into the world without a name and an address? But she was Al-Anon, and you know how they are. They want you back so they can keep helping you. You know, it's really incredible. And by the time, you see, this has no continuity at all. I don't even know where I am. But when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was adorable. I was absolutely adorable. I had on a pair of overalls with a big Mickey Mouse insignia on the front. I had a hat pulled way, way down. It was a leather hat, a wonderful hat. My hair was out to wherever. I had dyed it a combination of flame and moon gold, which means that my hair made Lucille Ball look like a brunette. That's how red my hair was. And I had on this very, very nice camel hair coat. It was June. And I was carrying a shopping bag filled with somebody's tennis shoe, who knows, a cigarette butt from an actor named Arthur Franz, whom I had very successfully stalked like the year before, picking up his cigarette butts. And whether I had on shoes or not, nobody ever got that far. I had these little spots and things all over my face and my body. The overalls had a big hole in the crotch. And the family jewels were always spilling out in meetings because I didn't wear underwear and I'm Sicilian. And the secretaries would not understand when I said, I'm just trying to make friends here. And she gave me a big pin to hold it together, you know. And a friend of mine, Miriam, says that she almost drank on her first night of sobriety because I was such a clown. She took one look at me and she said, oh my God, Ronald McDonald is an alcoholic too. You know, I was just an absolute mess. And thank God in those days, you know, they have these announcements sometimes where they say, if you disturb the meeting, you will be asked to leave. Well, thank God they didn't do that because I was standing on tables with knives and things like that, screaming. I was going to rip my stomach open, and it was their fault. And I went to Architects of Adversity. I mean, that was like the midnight group. It was wonderful. I mean, people screaming and yelling and throwing things all the time. And I was a real, real mess. But I did do certain things. I went to my book study with my book. Get yourself a step study and a book study and go to those meetings. Don't just go to speaker meetings and sit and listen to stupid people like me because you're not gonna really get it. You know, you're gonna get it by getting in the book. And Donald Madden, who was a wonderful man, Donald used to put us all in cars and take us around to places. And in those days, you didn't say to someone you sponsor, meet me at a meeting, and you said anything like, well, I don't think so. I don't think I want to go. We said, okay, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and we were there. I mean, it's a little different in AA today. You have a little more chutzpah or something, but your chutzpah is going to get you back out on the street if you don't do the right things. By the way, I noticed some people are texting still, and while you're texting, could I suggest that you text to the person you're texting, say, I am in an AA meeting. I will be in the bar in a short while, so be sure to save me a seat. I will be using with you in no time at all. Not that I have that much to say, but just pay attention. You never know. And you might, oh, by the way, for those people who were too late for the 12 traditions, it's really a shame because subliminally in those 12 traditions were subliminal messages on how to get laid tonight without even trying. And you weren't paying attention, so you missed it. And you don't have to use safe sex if you listen to the 12 traditions. So from now on, when you're in a meeting, pay attention to the 12 traditions. You never know exactly what you're going to get or how you're going to get it. My son and I had a phenomenal history in AA. We fought in this very meeting, in fact, many times, fist fights. There was a time once when we were going somewhere, I think I was taking him to an Alateen thing. And he said something to aggravate me, so like any, I was sober. He was, I think, getting sober. And like any good alcoholic parent, I just knocked the shit out of him. And like a good alcoholic kid, he karate chopped me on my neck, and the car goes careening around. And I was told in AA that if you're in an uncomfortable situation, you leave. So I got out of the car. And I started running down the street towards what was a security building with a guard there. Very bright man. He saw me coming, went into his security building and locked the door with me on the outside, banging and screaming and yelling with Chuck behind me. Chuck caught me and kind of, you know, beat on me or whatever. And I finally got back in the car and I locked all the doors. And I said, "Get out of my way, Chuck, I'm leaving." And he stood in front of the car and he just folded his arms and said, "You're not going anywhere." And I said, "Yeah, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of here." "No, you're not going anywhere." I said, "Yes, I am. You better move because I'm leaving." He said, "No, you're not." I got to tell you, the expression on his face when I hit him with that car, it was worth it. It was worth everything. But what this proves is, I'll tell you that in AA, they don't listen to newcomers, because I also knew that if you were in trouble, you went to an AA meeting. So I went to Ohio Street, and there was a woman named Charlotte who used to greet everybody there. She always dressed in pink or blue. She was a lovely lady. And I walked up to the door, and I'm bleeding, and I'm sweating, and my clothes are torn, and she says, "Hello, Bill, how are you?" And I said, "I think I just ran over my son. I think I killed him." She says, "That's okay, honey. You just keep coming back." So tell us whatever you want to tell us, because we don't listen. We just have stock answers. "I think my mother died." "That's okay. You keep coming back." "My father just committed suicide." "That's okay, honey. There are no big deals." I mean, you know, we just don't pay attention. We just say things to you, and it's okay. I've had a wonderful sobriety. Everything in my life is just terrific today. Like the first speaker, I went back to school, and I got a master's degree as a clinical psychologist when I was 65 years old, graduated with honors, and I'm actually certified on both coasts as being an insane person, East Coast, West Coast. I have papers, and yet I'm a psychologist. So I mean, you know, we're also, you know, the patients are running the hospitals now, as you well know if you've been in. I mean, you go into what do they call them? Some treatment centers, and the minute they're sober, about 24 hours, they become a senior executive, you know, and they're telling you how, whatever to do. Don't pay attention. Just go to meetings, work the steps, get a sponsor. By the way, my sponsor is Clancy. And I know that you know that Pacific Group people usually show up at meetings in jackets and ties. You will notice I don't have on a jacket, I don't have on a tie. Now, if you want to tell Clancy that I showed up here without a coat and a tie, you go right ahead. I'll give you his phone number. But I will tell him you're lying. And he's going to believe me because he knows I never lie to him. So, you know, let's see what else. Something else. I know other things must have happened. I don't know. When I was 15 months sober, they took me away from Ohio Street in a straitjacket. That's nice. I went to County General. And, you know, at County General, they have these different stripes that tell you differently. You know, blue means one thing, green means one thing. Yellow means psych ward. Now, as I'm walking along the yellow stripe, do I need to tell you where I thought I was going? Follow the yellow brick road. I thought I was on my way to Oz, and in a way I was in my head, you know, because I was nuttier than a fruitcake. But people really took care of me in Alcoholics Anonymous. They gave me food, they took care of me. At one time, Chuck and I got in such a fist fight that I left home. I left my apartment, I ran away from home, and I ended up living on the streets of Fountain Avenue and then in the doorways of Fountain Avenue. And then I ended up sleeping under a desk at the corner of Santa Monica and Fairfax in a place called Barbara's Place. And they gave me a job there typing and editing scripts, which was wonderful because, I mean, I was coming off lots of speed. So ordinarily I type between 90 and 125 words a minute. So you can imagine how fast I typed. And it was a great job because at night I would go to a meeting, I would come home, crawl under my desk, and the next morning get up and type a little while and then go to a meeting. And we went to lots of meetings in those days. We went to 3-4 meetings a day. And I suggest if you're really new, you go to that many meetings. And I'm going to show you something. See this little piece of paper here? It's all torn up. It's merely messed up. And this is a group of questions that were done by a woman named Liz Lopi when I was new. And I see I got a few more minutes, so I would like to ask you to participate in this with me. And if you're new, I want you to watch how the hands go up. It'll show you what we in Alcoholics Anonymous live through, because we're very courageous people. We live through a lot of things without drinking and using. So let's see. How many people have not understood the program in the beginning, or even now for that matter, and kept coming back and have managed to stay sober and clean? Show me some hands. See, we don't really understand it, a lot of us. How many people have had car trouble or broken shoestrings and stuff like that and stayed sober and clean? That's the worst. That's the worst stuff, isn't it? How many people have moved or not had the rent or been evicted and stayed sober and clean? See? How many people have been hospitalized or had someone they've loved been hospitalized and stayed sober and clean? Okay, how many people have a nervous breakdown and stayed sober and clean? Yeah, that's common there, Just fall on the floor and twitch a little. How many people have had friends or loved ones go out and drink or use and that you've stayed sober and clean? Okay. Oh, this is good. How many people have had encounters with police or the law and been jailed and stayed sober and clean? Now, when Chuck and I used to fight, the neighbors would call the police, or Chuck would call the police, and I would call the police, and no matter who called the police, they took me away because I was the adult. I was the adult. Oh, this is really good. How many people have had a sexual identity crisis and stayed sober and clean, though not necessarily straight? I recognize some of you guys from your pictures on Craigslist, so stop lying. The quicker you're honest about your sexuality, and I personally will not out you here, but you know who you are. How many people have started or ended a relationship and been stayed sober and clean? My book just fell. I'll get it later. Oh, here's good. How many people have 13-stepped someone or been 13-stepped and stayed sober and clean? Thank you so much. Okay. If you're new and you don't know what 13-stepping is, take my card and I'll let you know, especially some of you familiar faces from Craigslist. Look, I've never said I was totally straight, okay? I mean, back and forth. Best of both worlds, you're never alone on Saturday night. Until you get 73. Okay, let's see here. What is the next thing? Oh, this is good. How many people have talked to their sponsors and stayed sober and clean? How many people have worked with newcomers and stayed sober and clean? How many people have talked to their babies and stayed sober and clean? I lost my watch. Did I drop my watch? Well, that's all right. It's an expensive watch. Somebody will find it. I know you're honest. You'll give it back to me. Okay, let's see. How many people have worked the steps and stayed sober and clean? See, that's the real key. How many people have wanted to take a drink or use a pill, but you didn't, and you stayed sober and clean, and you're still sober and clean? That's right. Okay, that's the way the program works, actually. It's a bottom line. No matter what we do, we stay sober and clean. I'm beginning to obsess about that watch. I have just a little bit of an obsessive personality, and not a lot. Oh, there it is. Okay. This is just some stuff people said to me. I love this. Somebody said to me, "Stop giving birth to the whale." I have no idea what that meant. But I've stopped giving birth to the whale, and I've stayed sober and clean. So whatever it means, it's fine. I don't know whether any of you have gotten anything out of this. I certainly have. I stayed sober and clean despite the fact that my mouth is running. Let's see, how much time have I got left? Oh, well, I've got just enough time, I think. Somebody said to me before, they said, would you mind telling about your story about your first sober relationship in Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, okay, I'll tell you about that. Because, you know, they tell you don't have relationships early on in early sobriety. And when I got sober, I had a mistress, a wife, a couple of lovers, and occasional strangers. And, but I wanted something substantial, because I heard people in meetings talking about, I have my relationship. And so I kept telling people, I want a relationship. I would like to have a relationship. I would have a relationship. And I drove them absolutely mine, and they finally took me to, what's the name of that place? It sells the sexual goods. Oh, Treasure Chest. You know that place, obviously. Okay, they took me to the Treasure Chest, and they bought me a Jack Pack. Now, if you're not familiar, what a Jack Pack is it's made of plastic, and it comes in a little box about this big, flat, and when you take it out, it's just this flat piece of plastic. But what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to blow it up with hot air or fill it with warm water, and then, of course, it has like a hole running through it. It's like a donut. And then you use it, you know what I'm saying? And that was my relationship. I started my first relationship with a Jack Pack. And it was really quite wonderful, no back talk. And we had a wonderful time. I would, and you go home, you go to meetings, and after the meeting, people would say, well, I have to go home because my girlfriend is waiting, my boyfriend is waiting, my husband and my wife. I did not say I have to go home because my Jack Pack is waiting. I mean, it just wasn't something I wanted to say. But anyway, I would go home and I would have my little, And one night, I went home from a meeting and I was just sort of, lying there, and we had finished. I was smoking a cigarette, and it wasn't smoking in the usual sense of the word. And I happened to look down and I saw this Jack Pack. And I said to myself out loud, what is that Jack Pack doing wrapped around my penis? It was a moment of awareness. I jerked the thing off of me, so to speak. I threw it on its pillow, and I went into the kitchen, and I got a butcher knife, and I came back, and I stabbed it to death. And it was horrendous. Air, water, everything went everywhere. And I did what I was supposed to do, which was call my sponsor. And I called him and I said, I just killed my Jack Pack. And he said, now do you know why you couldn't have a real person? And I'd like to apologize for that story. Number one, because I just saw there was a child in the room, which I did not know. I would not have told that story had I known the child was in the room. But in any case, that story doesn't have anything to do with sex. What that story has to do with is, it has to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous is a program of words and music. And the words are in the big book. The music is the laughter. The music is the laughter with which we heal one another. The music is the laughter in which we begin to understand that we're all the same, and we get better by having this wonderful music surround us every night in Alcoholics Anonymous. So what I would like to say, again, is I want to thank you for making such wonderful music this evening by laughing at me, with me, whatever. And I want to thank you for letting me and my children be in your band all these years. Thank you very much.